Okay, well, let's get going, guys. So chapter 20 in front of us, our third chapter of this unit, which will complete info that we need for this test. All right. So
you have a Zoom question. They asked, when are you gonna be sending the
study guide,
study guide? Can you send them today?
gotta send them today. Who said that? I gotta see who said that.
Oh, I already know who
Is
said
that
it. I
Daisha?
didn't have to look.
Where's
Tell
my
them I said it.
where's my chat? You see, that's why I love y'all, because y'all know me really well, and
Hopefully you won't send them out on Monday night.
right, that's what I'm saying, right?
4 a.m.
Instead of Monday night, yes. I got you, Daisha. Okay. Hey, look, you're looking at a God that does not mind getting reminders and does not being called on what I may be weak on sometimes. So I'll take it. I'm sorry. I will send it.
I know.
And you're always welcome to say, hey, remember that thing you said you were going to send? Please. Come on now, Sliman, just send it. That's okay. I like reminders. All right. This doesn't work. I don't know. I keep forgetting to bring my new green PowerPoint. There we go. Every day I forget. Okay. So what we're looking at, guys, in this chapter is, of course, the anatomy of the blood vessels, but certainly the order in which they occur coming off the heart. So if we're familiar with the aorta, right, that's going to be our big one. Any of those big arteries, guys, are going to be the ones that are considered elastic, because they're going to be ones that measure and control that huge force, that cardiac output, that stroke volume coming out of that left ventricle, right? So we'll see the combinations of different arteries that we have, whether they're elastic or distributing or resistance. With those words, you got to know which one, how they apply, where are they found in the body. So real quick before we get there, elastic ones are going to be the one that take the hit. That's why they call it elastic, because they have to bounce back. That's the compliance in the vascular system. That's what measures that blood pressure, of course, those big ones. The more reliable hit on that blood vessel is the elastic ones. So big blood vessels will be elastic. Those that distribute to the organs, right? Like think of the muscle, like carrying a load, like UPS to everyone's house. Those are the distributing arteries. Those are going to be called muscular arteries. Then we got the resistance arteries. That's going to be at the small level. When we finally get to the tissue level, those capillary beds, those are called resistance arteries. So those three, elastic, distributing, and resistance, are going to be what we see. So here we go. A little bit of heads up on that. It is a closed system of vessels. We'll see that some of these capillaries are a little more leaky than others, but it's still considered a closed system. So we don't just drop blood off at an organ, right? It more so is like this. If you have the tissue box, right? Here's an organ, the tissue box. If I put a pin in front of it, there's your blood vessel. It might go into the tissue box, but it never just spills blood. It's going to pass right through it. And the nutrients and wastes will diffuse directly in and out of that artery wall, right? The capillary wall into the organ. So that the the arteries are going to carry the blood away from the heart classically to anything that is systemic on their arterial side. So as they get smaller and smaller and smaller, here you go. We've seen it in the heart PowerPoint. We'll see it today. The aorta is the biggest, right? Then it turns to arteries as it branches off to the head, neck, arms, legs. Arteries get smaller to form arterioles, and then you get to the capillary level. So you're going to have arterial capillaries. Then you're going to have venous capillaries, that are the smallest veins. Venous capillaries will blend to make what's called venules, which are small veins. Those venules will merge to make veins, and then back to the vena cava. So one more time for that full list: aorta, arteries, arterial capillaries, This is at the tissue level now, and then we got venous capillaries taking the load away from the tissue. Veins, venules after venous capillaries, then veins, and then vena cava, back to the heart. So the capillaries directly serve tissues inside the organs, or some, to that degree, and veins carry blood away from those tissues, away from the systemic capillaries towards the heart. So be sure you just got that simple, navigation. 3 tunics, 3 layers are going to make these blood vessels. The lumen is always going to be the central space. That's the space inside the blood vessel. You could say the internal diameter if you wanted to say that, but it's really just the space where the blood is traveling. That is the lumen. And that word lumen is going to be common in other areas as well. Just times out on me. Hello. There we go. So first of all, you guys know how it was. Our tissue chapter, we learned about endothelium. This is going to be the inner layer of a blood vessel, the tunica interna, also the intima. So you can see the writing on the wall, how test questions come at you. What's that inner layer called? The tunica interna or intima. What is it? It's endothelium, which means it's simple squamous. So this past A&P class, we kind of really put off the tissues, didn't really do much like we normally do, but here's where they're going to hit you. So you got to know these specific tissues as we come to them. When you look at simple squamous, it's normally a single flat layer of cells, right? But in the case of a blood vessel that's round, you would imagine an internal lining to be these flattened cells, and I can't draw it, nothing. Flattened cells are going to be staggered, so they layer on the end of one layers on top of the end of another. So it seems like a continuous internal layer. It's really separate cells that are not side by side, they're kind of stacked slightly, kind of like you see a brick pattern, kind of stacked off to the side across each other. That's how these simple squamous cells will line the internal lining of that blood vessel, the endothelium. And as we'll see, some of them have a very tight lining. Some of them have not so tight lining. That's going to be the 3 brands that we see of capillaries coming out. But yeah, know that. Simple squamous, real important. Reason why it's so thin is because we want diffusion to happen, right? The tunica media is going to be your muscle layer. And we'll see this trend through all organs. The endothelium, the internal lining is always going to be epithelium in some way. That internal lining of something, internal lining of the bladder, internal lining of the heart, the intestines, no matter what you look at, the uterus, the trachea. It's always the internalmost lining is going to be epithelium. And this is a specific type of epithelium called endothelium, since it's on the inside. Then the second layer is always going to be muscle. In this case, it's smooth muscle. Regulated primarily by sympathetics, actually. As it constricts, what do you think that happens to the diameter of the lumen? It gets smaller, that's right. And vasodilation means it gets bigger. We'll see that constriction leads to more resistance, which was what decreases flow. That's some of the stuff that we'll mess with on Thursday, but you're going to want to tag those trends as you see them and try to think them through. So vasoconstriction constricts the diameter, which increases resistance, which decreases flow. So maybe you want to add that, right? Vasoconstriction is a decrease in diameter, increase in resistance, decrease in flow. One more time. Yeah, decrease diameter. This is all vasoconstrict. We decrease that diameter of a blood vessel. When that happens, you increase the resistance on the inside of that blood vessel, which then decreases flow. No problem. And vasodilation would be the opposite. You decrease resistance, you increase flow.
Decrease flow.
Dilation is, we're moving to dilation now. You increase diameter, yeah. Decrease resistance
Okay,
and increase flow. So just a flip flop, one from the other, yeah.
I got you.
So I'll warn you, we all know how we are, right, on tests. Please learn learn your favorite, and just know the other is the opposite. Sometimes when you learn both, you all get jumbled together, and you're stuck picking the wrong one. Sometimes that stinks. Okay. The tunica externa is going to be collagen fibers, connective tissue. Larger vessels will have a vasa vasorum, which is like an extra bit of nourishment for that larger blood vessel. Extra bit of blood supply for larger vessels. So simply put, like all organs that we'll see, the internal lining is epithelium. It's a lining. The middle layer is muscle. The outer layer is more connected, thicker, denser tissue. And it gets more specific than that, but this is a good starting place. So here we go. Here's a typical blood vessel structure. The inside lining is going to be, you're still going to always have a little bit thin layer of connective tissue, but it's mainly the endothelium that we see on the inside. The middle layer, the media, is the muscle, smooth muscle. Outer layer, connective tissue, collagen, making the externa. So veins and arteries, real similar. The big differences, we'll just go ahead and say it. Of course, veins will have valves, whereas arteries do not have any valves. Veins have valves to help prevent backflow. It's like a catch, because as the blood is passively pumped up, let's say up the legs, it reaches a certain valve. That way that blood can't fall back down again, because the valve is going to hold it there as like a checkpoint. Okay. So veins will have valves, which of course you can see the writing on the wall with that. Those can mess up real easily. The more sitting you do, the weaker these valves get, because your blood's not normally, you're not having the same full blood pressure going through all the time. So yeah, people get weak valves and end up getting lots of swelling in the legs or all that kind of thing. But yeah, veins have valves, and veins are not going to have as thick of a media. Look at the media on an artery. Look at the muscle there. Thinner muscle on a vein. That's why we'll take this term venous return, which is the return of blood going to the heart from the systemics. Venous return is a big deal, because venous return is a pass. There's no real, the blood pressure in veins is so low, right? We need a certain amount of activity and a good cardiac output on the left to push that venous return back around, right? That's why anytime you rest, that helps your venous return a huge amount. Anytime you put your legs, above the heart, that helps a whole lot. There are these exercises where some people just, lay against a wall, put their legs up on the wall. Have you seen that? Supposedly it clears your mind, it clears out toxins out of your body because it helps venous return. Same as which you could say that massage therapy is a huge, benefit to the body, because that all automatically assists in venous return, especially if it's a Swedish massage. or lymphatic massage, which is always going, strokes going towards the heart. That's what the whole philosophy is for. All righty. Any questions on the linings? Real simple so far, right? And the differences. So this is just a picture, you know, the graphic's kind of hard to see. It's just showing you how the order that we were talking about, how we go from the bigger arteries down to arterioles and capillaries and back up to venules and veins. That same order. Does anybody need a repeat of that? I don't really like this picture that much, to be honest. It's too hard to, I mean, it does show you the shape differences, but you know. It may be interesting with a beer sometime, but in the big picture, you know, of course, things are going to get smaller as they get smaller, don't they? Okay, so one more time, I'll just say it anyway. Arteries, arterioles, arterial capillaries are down here. They turn into venous capillaries, which means in order to say that we're changing from an arterial capillary to a venous capillary, there is a mild structural change, yes, in the makeup of it. But overall, once we've unloaded the O2, right? And if you're going to load up CO2, which is the toxin from the tissue, then you're going to be a vein. So veins are going to carry blood back to the heart, loading up CO2, right? Which is the toxin from the tissues. And then you're going to be in a venous capillary network, up to venules, up to veins and vena cava from there. And yeah, this is our first introduction to the 3 brands of arteries. This right here is supposed to loosely give you an idea of where the lymphatics fit in. That is a horrible picture, though. There's nothing about this picture that's really anatomically correct. Well, not completely. It's the lymphatic system is much bigger than what you see here. So don't let that throw you. This is just an example that lymphatics will basically pull, right? Pull the waste products from the tissue spaces around the capillaries. So basically suck it in like a vacuum cleaner. Think of it like that. And all those waste products are now going to filter through the lymph network, being broken down by different white blood cells that might be concentrated in those lymph nodes. So that'll be our next chapter in Unit 2. But just to show you that the lymphatics run right alongside, you know, the arterial venous system. But here you go. Here's our first bigger arteries, the elastic artery. These are called conducting vessels. They serve as pressure reservoirs. Smooth out large blood pressure fluctuations. Everything right here is what you might see on test. This statement down here. So these are the thicker walled arteries that absorb the brunt of that blood pressure coming through, that's systolic. So after we get past the bigger arteries, we get to the muscular. So the first brand of the conducting, the elastic ones are the big ones. So things like the main divisions. Oh, go ahead, Lennon. Yeah. So the aorta, of course, is a given, right? That's the main hub coming off that ventricle, of course. Then any of the really other big ones, like common carotid, coming right off the aortic arch that we're going to see. Subclavian, another big one coming off the aortic arch. The pulmonary trunk, another big trunk coming off the heart, but on the right side. And then the common iliacs, which are going to be the main 2 branches. When your aorta gets right below the navel, it splits. So I'm talking about the big branches. All these big branches are going to be the conducting elastic brand. So basically something close to right off of the aorta is the easiest way to put it, right? If it's a big one, serving a big area. Our next one, our next group is going to be the muscular arteries. These are distributing. So, yeah, I know it's a little tough. Let me go back one sec. I would, just to be safe, okay, because these are going to be questions already written. I might be adding to some of these, but just to let you know, you should know both terms, elastic and conducting. And the word pressure is going to be a keyword. You know, I'm big on keywords. Pressure is a big keyword for these elastic arteries. When we get to the second one again, these muscular distributing vessels. This is where we're going to get our first, decrease in flow there with some vasoconstriction. You don't want to pump blood straight into organs at too high of a rate. There's reasons for that. It'll wear out the tissue, but the other reason is you want adequate, oxygen diffusion. Because you'll see this in the kidney. If the kidney filters too fast, how in the world is it going to reabsorb the stuff it needs, So we don't want things to go too fast. So here we get some of the other branches, not as big, but things like the brachial artery, femoral artery, renal arteries. So these are the mid-size arteries. Distributing or muscular. The last one is going to be, the last level is going to be the smaller ones, the arterioles. These are considered resistance because this is where we meet the most resistance, leading into the capillary beds. So arterioles are known as resistance vessels. So these are going to be the smallest arteries before we become a capillary. So that might have been a blank on your PowerPoint, so make sure you put the word small, arterioles or smallest. And we have these meta-arterioles also. They're basically just an extra arteriole. Let's go back to that picture real fast. This will be another example of a meta-arteriole. Meta means just beyond. So it's just going to be just outside the normal capillary network. It's just an additional vessel. You can see how the terminal arteriole leads right into that capillary bed. The meta-arteriole takes a little shortcut around it. That's why meta means just beyond. This could also be considered what's called collateral circulation. The more, the more blood vessels you have in your body, the more circulation is going to be completed. But the better way to put that is the more blood vessels you have, the more resistance you have, because the more resistance vessels you have overall, the more resistance in the circuit you're going to have. So another way to put it is the larger you are, the more blood vessels you're going to have, which means you're going to have more resistance vessels, which can increase blood pressure, is what I'm trying to get at. Because you increase resistance, you increase blood pressure. So that's why being overweight can be not just a load on the heart, but it's also a load on the venous return, which produces a load on the heart. So everything flip-flops, guys, with this system. And you have a lot more families to feed as far as your tissue cells out here. it's load on the heart because it's more load on the resistance overall. And if you think about what we did last time, think of that back resistance coming off. We're pumping into that aorta, right? Remember that resistance we talked about into the aorta, that backflow? That comes from all this too. Okay, so I think is that a repeat slide? Oh, maybe I'll just come back to it.
You went back.
Okay. Here we go. There's just another idea of our capillary bed. So you see some of these precapillary sphincters. This is just another way to control the flow so it's not too fast. That's the whole meaning of resistance. You know, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about resistance is bad. Resistance is needed here. We want to restrict flow to slow down, right? It'd be like you expecting, you know, have you ever been on a ski lift? Those ski lifts, they go pretty fast over the mountain or down the mountain. But when they get to the terminal, if they didn't slow down, right, it'd be quite interesting to get off and on of, right? So we need this blood to slow down. So we want proper diffusion going on at that level. Okay, so that was 3 types of arteries, right? Now we're going to switch to 3 types of capillaries. So don't get these confused. They're whole different words. So I always, you know, kind of preach to my A&P1 students, when you're preparing this stuff in your brain, if you don't know it, haven't been exposed to it before, you want to immediately start fragmenting what you allow into your brain. So maybe when you go back and study this is a good stopping point. Now go back, close your books, you know, put away the Snapchat, whatever it might be, and write down on a blank sheet of paper, do I know the 3 types of arteries? And work on that for 10, 15 minutes, right? Let that be your task. And then when you've done it, and only when you've done it successfully, then move on maybe to this 3 types of capillaries. Or if you're rewatching the video, stop the video and catch up with me, you know, learn it, and then start the video again afterwards. Don't just listen to the whole hour and, you know, hope that you're getting everything. It's better to prove to yourself that you got it before you move on to something else. It's hard to do that in class because we got to keep rolling, of course. But here you go. So yeah, allow 1 red blood cell at a time. That's how small these are. 1 cell thick. So 3 types: continuous, fenestrated, and sinusoidal. First of all, let's just take these 3. Realize what we're talking about. If I draw another lumen on the board, I'll do my best to try to show this. Well, here's my squamous cells, right? Kind of stacked across each other. Right? Something like that, right? They're kind of layered across each other. That's a continuous type setup because there's no real leakage that can be seen. It's tight. If I draw another one, you can see how there is a little bit of leakage through these divisions, right? And then of course the sinusoidal will be even more and more holes and pores in them. So long story short, which one's the most leaky? The sinusoidal. Which one's the tightest? Continuous. There you go. Okay, good. So that's going to be coming at you in some way. Fenestrated means pores. So that's when we start to introduce some holes, right? So it's a little more leaky, medium leaky. Sinusoidal is very, very leaky. That's what we see in the liver.
You said fenestrated means
Pores.
pores.
Pores, right. All right, so the continuous, our first one, the one I've drawn on the board on the left here. These are the least permeable, most common. For example, this is what makes the blood-brain barrier. So there's still diffusion, guys, okay? There's still diffusion, but it's controlled. There's always going to be diffusion. So skin, muscles, blood-brain barrier are common examples here. This is again continuous. So you can see where they overlap here. It's mostly a tight fit. There's some small intercellular clefts. That's always the case. But realize the size of the scale that we're talking about here. Look how that red blood cell is small enough. It's not like that red blood cell is going to come out. The red blood cells never come out unless it's a damaged blood vessel. But what does come out are some of the nutrients, the ions, right through the wall. And incidentally, there's your squamous cell right there. There's the nucleus of that squamous cell. They just call it an endothelial cell. It is still a squamous cell. All right, so on to the next one, the second one, the fenestrated. I read or reddened this word pores in the updated PowerPoint because I'm really, really, really big on keywords. I think that's a great way to spark the brain, you know, to look for these words. Greater permeability than regular continuous capillaries. And this is what's going to give us what happens at the respiratory membrane. This is going to be in our next unit when we cover that. But when we get in the very, very deep part of the lung, have you ever heard of alveoli? The little air sacs, they literally look like little grapes. And that's how it's all set up. If you know what a bunch of grapes look like on a stem, that's exactly what the lung fields will look like. The stems would be the bronchi and the bronchioles. Eventually they lead to these little sacs, which would be these grapes, or at least they look that way. Well, imagine a grape, right? And then you put a blood vessel next to it, right? The touching of the blood vessel to the touching of the grape, the alveolus in the lung, they blend to make what's called a respiratory membrane, which is where O2 and CO2 will go back and forth and be exchanged at the lung. And here's where we have the fenestrated capillaries doing that, offering simple diffusion of these nonpolar gases. Dare I say nonpolar in this class? Do y'all remember that at all? Yep, oh man, you should see the faces right now in AP1. They're just now getting it. We're doing the whole cell membrane thing right now. You know, things going through, facilitated or not, right? The good old days. But that's a great example though, with fenestrated, offering a little more diffusion than normal. Also, we can say the kidneys use this, right, for filtrating. Because when we come to the glomerulus in the kidney, a group of capillaries, right? It's just not about a clump of capillaries with a whole bunch of blood pressure coming at it. We have another membrane right here, a filtration membrane here. And again, another good example of fenestrated capillaries making up that glomerulus right there. Small intestines, of course, we want good absorption. So the reason why I'm kind of taking my time and pausing on this slide is if you just live in it, swim in it, you think about it, anytime you need more just general absorption, right? Good absorption of nutrients, good filtration in the kidney, good exchange of gases for the respiratory, it just makes sense that it would be the fenestrated kind. We don't want it to be too leaky. We don't want it to be too tight, right? It's just a good fit right in the middle. That's where we are here with the fenestrated. There's a shot of them, got those holes in it. And then our last brand, the sinusoidal, is going to be the real leaky with large lumens. They kind of look broken. They look damaged, honestly. but they're very leaky. Things in the liver, bone marrow, lymph organs. These are things where we're producing a lot of things and we want to get rid of them. Think of the bone marrow producing all those blood cells, guys. These lymph tissues maturing the lymph cells. And they got to pass out of there. These are big structures. These aren't just ions. These are big structures. So they want to be easily gotten out. Large molecules, large proteins, blood cells, that kind of thing. When I say blood cells, I don't mean we're leaking blood. I mean we're producing red, white, and platelet cells that need to get out and go do their thing, right? And these don't readily just pass through a tight membrane like we've been talking about. These have to just be coming out of these sinusoidal capillaries. So that's why, you know, I bolded certain words and tell you this story to just try to give you a better way to think about it. When it makes sense, it makes sense. Good bedtime story for my kids. You would believe the questions my 13-year-old asked me. He stumps me, actually. He asked me some stuff. I say, Jake, man, I don't know. You stump me. He does it every day. He'll ask a question that's just like, geez, where's he getting this stuff from? I gotta show you a picture of him one day. He looks like a mop. He's got the longest hair. Curly, he hadn't cut it in 2 years. So it's long curl. He looks like, you know, Slash or Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, you know, real skinny. So funny. Whenever I'm walking with him, like in the mall, all the girls are like, you know,
That's a trend, yeah.
and I'm like, Jake, are you seeing these girls checking you out? And he's like, huh? What? He's oblivious to it all. It's amazing. Oh, it's so funny. So yeah, these are the most permeable, no doubt, the sinusoidal. So I think y'all got that. That's just a displaced picture of the capillary bed. Sorry about that. I think what they're trying to show here is a vascular shunt. A shunt is considered when a artery and vein have a direct connection. So that's an example of a shunt. An arteriovenous connection like this, quicker way to go right through without getting involved in the full bed. That's your arteriovenous vascular shunt.
Is that like the same shunt, you know, like some people get in their head?
Yeah, a shunt is a direct pathway. That's a word used pretty loosely. Anytime they put a direct pathway, yeah.
So that's,
Like a nonstop flight, yeah.
okay, so that's what it looks like.
When it goes straight across, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I bolded these first. I think I moved the statements around. I'm tricky like that, guys. So in your PowerPoint, it might be the statement that's down here. If you want to tag that, these are the two that are most important in this slide. Just I moved it around to prioritize it. Sorry about that. Dacia's probably gonna get upset with me. Moving things around last minute. So yeah, that right there might be something good to know. Precapillary sphincters control flow through the capillary bed. And then we said that about 10 minutes ago. So you tell me, let's kind of step back a second, breathe a little bit. Are we talking high resistance here in the capillary bed? Yes. Does high resistance increase flow or decrease flow? Decrease flow. Very, very good. Yep. All right, so moving to the venous system, coming out of the capillary bed, now into the small veins, which are going to be venules. Again, low blood pressure in the venous system. These are very much known as, whereas the arteries were known as pressure reservoirs, right? These are blood reservoirs. So yeah, they're going to hold on to blood a little longer. It's more, not stagnant, but certainly a slower flow than the arterial side. So, when they say exercise regularly, they're not just talking about for the good of your fit body, or the good of your joints. That's certainly important, but, to keep the arterial venous system conditioned is what keeps this capacitance, where's that word? There we go. Keeps that capacitance on the up and up. Whenever you're sitting for too long of a period, or when you retire, now you're sitting all day long, sometimes in that recliner watching Golden Girls. It's fun and everything, but guess what happens to your vascular system? It very much takes a dive, as does metabolism, the digestive, respiratory, everything. Your posture gets all screwed up because you're sitting in that lazy boy. So is it aging that necessarily causes all these problems? Not really. It's what are you doing with your years? Yes, you're going to age, certainly, but it's what you do with that body frame a lot of times that determines how things can go. So on the vein side, of course, we say that the veins have less mass overall, less, density of a muscular wall, that kind of thing. They do have valves, like you mentioned. Their lumens will be a little bit bigger, of course, to try to allow more venous return. So with increasing that lumen, we start to reduce the resistance outside of the capillary bed, of course. Number one thing, please understand they have valves. Lymphatic vessels will also have valves. So think of the things coming back to the heart, having valves, so that you don't get as much of a backup. So have you ever had somebody squeeze your legs, which is called petrissage, right? Or even squeeze your arms, that kind of thing? Squeezing of the legs is a great thing. That's what moves that blood up the valves, right? Keeps it going. That petrissage. That's why it's so relieving for someone to just squeeze your legs after a couple of days of a workout. So there we go. Low blood pressure. And why do we say low blood pressure? Because we have an increased lumen, decreased resistance, right? So keep track of those things. Increased lumen, which is in a sense vasodilation, but we'll just say increased lumen at this point. Increased lumen, bigger diameter size, low blood pressure, low resistance. Low blood pressure, low resistance, increased flow. The hope is to increase the flow, yes. Sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. So increased lumen, low blood pressure, low resistance, increased flow, hopefully. So we get up to the muscular venules and then the medium veins. Where do we go after that? Good old veins, regular old veins. We have these venous sinuses as well. These are collecting areas, kind of like we saw in the heart, that coronary sinus at the back of the heart. These have no smooth muscle, or very, very thin, if any, these sinuses. We have another venous sinus around the brain. This was the, if you remember from A&P1, Remember the subarachnoid space? Sort of, that was between the arachnoid and the pia. Well, if we go closer to the skull, if we go from the arachnoid between the dura and the arachnoid, underneath the dura is the subdural space. Then we have the arachnoid. Then underneath that, we have subarachnoid, where the CSF is. Well, the CSF, yeah, that's its own thing. But now in the subdural space between the dura and the arachnoid, that's where we see venous blood circulate, kind of like a radiator system, honestly. It's draining all the used up blood from the brain around the inside the skull, but around the brain. That's our dural venous sinus. Which of course will lead, down toward the heart. Of course, it has to, down the jugulars and everything. Any venous blood, deoxygenated venous blood is going to be sent towards the heart there in this case. So since there's no muscle in these are not capable of vasoconstriction. The largest of the veins, of course, again, thinner tunica media than the arteries, definitely, but a very, very thick externa, just for the capacitance. It has to be strong on the outside to maintain the amount of blood coming into it. I told you this stuff was kind of boring, didn't I? Some of it's exciting. I think I had you guys with the resistance. That was exciting. After that, it's like, we're almost there. They're almost there to the fun part. So look at the blood, the typical blood distribution in a resting adult. This shows you how much blood veins hold. Over 50%. That's alarming how much blood is sitting there in the veins. If you want to get up and move. Especially when you consider veins are carrying, the lymph vessels are carrying a lot of the harsher toxins, but the veins are still carrying a bunch of waste products that you really need to get out of your body. So we kind of carry our past with us, The past 3 days are with us. Every day we walk around and get all that stuff out of there. That's why drinking water is, always good to flush everything out the best way you can. And again, exercise is what speeds this up. At least the blood's still going to be there, but at least it speeds up the toxin release. So, I don't expect you to know this entire chart, but I would expect you to see the obvious, right? That veins hold the most stagnant blood, you could say. Okay, so I'll back up. If these veins have weak valves or an extremely low venous return, or if there's inflammation for some reason, or if there's just pulmonary insufficiency leading to left heart weakness, all these things can lead to a backup of fluid here, weakening the veins. Since veins don't have big muscular walls anyway, it's very easy to get weak veins. And that would be varicosities. So obesity, of course, can certainly do it, hereditary things. So there you go. Everybody has seen, I guess, what varicose veins can look like. This is a pretty bad case here. Now, I mentioned massage. To some small degree, you can help with this, but no, massage would not be a fix for this. It would have to be some kind of medical treatment to help that. You can't squeeze these away. That would not be a safe thing to do. There you go. There's our order. If you didn't get it before, the easy order. How to go from the heart back to the heart. So we're going to see some pictures coming up pretty soon, and then some example questions, and we'll be good to go. It's 6:30, guys. We've been about in for an hour. Are you still good for another 15 minutes before we take a break? Okay. So there's going to be a portal system to consider with the liver, especially here, where we have two consecutive capillary networks before returning to the heart. So the deal with the liver, right? Imagine, guys, we have this aorta distributing, blood to all the organs. And of course, those same organs are going to deliver that venous blood back, right, on the venous system coming back. When it comes to the liver acts as like a middleman, a middle woman, the female. Instead of all these intestines just sending back venous blood straight to the vena cava, we want to send that intestinal blood to the liver first to be kind of detoxified. And then the liver kind of takes it all, takes the hit. Then the liver sends the blood to the vena cava. So that's why we got two capillary networks there going on through that liver portal system. So we'll see that. Here's some of the examples. So in Meyer's video, if you watched them, they're very good, by the way. She explains things crystal clear. Oh yeah. Yeah, she's she's probably sleepy as she's doing it, to be honest.
It's not really boring. It's so like.
She's straightforward, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the information is key. Some of the things she says is very important. So I took this from her video. It's like picking up something and then delivering what you pick up. That's what the liver is doing in this case. Another example there between the hypo and the anterior pit. And that one I just spoke of between the intestines and liver. Okay, and anastomosis, this is just a convergence point between two vessels. Another way that venous and arterial can combine there. And then there's that shunt we mentioned.
I thought the part of that was in the heart, and that's when it makes you
Anastomosis can be new vessel growth, yes, but not just in the heart. Yeah. No. So I just put this example in there for the arteriovenous shunt. This is when an artery directly flows to a vein. So of course, this is what they do with a heart bypass, or in your hands, but that's not that important. It's just the word for no hair on the surface of hands or feet. Oh yeah. So just as a keyword, that shunt there, when you bypass the capillary bed is when you're considered a shunt. Oops. There we go. So think of these anastomoses as collateral flow, alternative routes of blood supply. That's how I've come to know them. So these alternative routes are always going to be, automatically made. And when a person's, like when she was mentioning, the person's heart can become weak or overworked, I should say, the heart's going to naturally produce these other convergent routes in the attempt to keep the coronary circulation going. But again, what happens when you build more vessels? You increase more resistance, which increases blood pressure overall. So that tends to catch up with the heart in the long run. It's a temporary fix, but tends to catch up in a bad way.
And weakens the heart.
It overall can weakens the heart because there's more pressure in the system. Yeah. So that's just a quick pic to show you the variations. The simplest pathway, of course, is our regular arterial system coming into a capillary bed and then coming out like we've been talking about. A portal system when we use two different capillary beds to make it work. Here's a regular capillary bed with an anastomosis shunt, like a bypass going across. And then, of course, it just gets more complicated with all this collateral blood circulation that can go on. And that is dependent on the person. We see these in joints, that kind of thing, where there's tons of blood vessels around joints because of the activity levels there. So there you go. That's just a review slide. All right, so here's some pictures. So we'll just look at these pictures real quick and then we'll take our break. These are the new pictures that I just put in. So you don't see these right unless you quickly printed whatever I did. But yeah, we're used to seeing that heart. We're used to seeing these pulmonary arteries coming from the heart to the lungs and then back with pulmonary veins, left ventricle, all that stuff. So that's just a summary slide, really. Nothing really to learn on this slide. This is another one showing you a brief look at how those arterial vessels will feed each part of the body. Again, not completely anatomically correct, but I think the descriptions here in this picture are quite nice. It's just telling you that the liver will filter toxins from the blood, stores, transfers, and mobilizes nutrients. All that's good stuff to know, guys. Blow that. I don't know what happened to my slide here. 1 second. It just disappeared on me. There we go. So all that stuff right there is actually really good to know. Good review of everything, honestly, even if you include the lungs, right? Oxygenate blood, remove carbon dioxide from blood, return blood to the heart. Obvious things there. Heart itself, the right side pumps blood to the lungs, left side pumps blood to the body. These are all things that we should definitely know by now. So I like this picture because it had a good, level base of info for each of these. The intestines, as you know, or hope to know, that it's big for absorbing nutrients. Kidneys filter waste from the body, form urine. So, this is AMP2, guys. These are all the systems we're going to hit. So I just thought it'd be nice to at least see this. This is where we're going. Now, it doesn't say much about the pelvis and legs, but coming from my experience, the kind of work I've done in, bone and muscle stuff, there's tons of toxins that sit in the muscles, tons of toxins. And, you got to get that stuff out. That's what ages you. That's what oxidizes your cells, ages you if those toxins sit there too long. So. Whoops, my bad. So I'll just put this one on the screen just so we can get a small review of these larger blood vessels coming in and out of the heart. It's not labeled. So I know you guys have that picture of the heart that I gave. Maybe you can use that picture to label these if you haven't done it already. So let's start coming from the right ventricle real fast. And we only have like two or maybe three more pictures to show you. Coming off the right ventricle, what do we have? Pulmonary trunk. Just going to put this on the screen with a little clicker thing. Okay, so here's our right ventricle. This will be our pulmonary trunk. As it comes off, it's going to hit the left and right. The right one's been obscured a little bit. Pulmonary arteries, because they're coming off the heart, deoxygenated blood, very good. Then they come back from the lungs via the, there would be your left and your right there. Come back from the lungs with the pulmonary veins right here. Into that left atrium, right? Now we go down left ventricle through the bicuspid, up through the aorta. So at this point, it will be called the ascending aorta, then the aortic arch, and then as it goes down, the descending aorta, which is what you see down here at the bottom of the heart. There's your descending aorta. It's also called the thoracic aorta since it's in the chest. At this point, once it gets past the diaphragm, there's a hole in the diaphragm for the aorta. Then it's going to be called the abdominal aorta, splitting off for the spleen, the kidney, that kind of thing, and the intestines as it goes through the mesenterics. Well, let's do these other big ones we have not done yet up here. On your picture, do you have the vena cava as well or no? Does it show any branch of it? Okay.
It has the 3 branches, but.
Yeah, but nothing for the vena cava. Okay. All right. Well, for right now, everyone knows this is your superior vena cava. Everybody good with that one? Well, what makes the vena cava come together? So there's the SVC, superior vena cava. These are going to be called brachiocephalics. So the right brachiocephalic, left brachiocephalic veins will merge together coming toward the heart. So your arrows should be coming in. These two brachiocephalics, it's one word. Left and right brachiocephalic veins is what makes the superior vena cava. And if you think of the word brachiocephalic, what are we joining? The arm and the head, right? Brachiocephalic. So making, you want to back up another stage, making the brachiocephalics are going to be the internal jugular and the subclavian. Internal jugular is coming from the head, of course. That's the big ones coming down from the neck right there. There's your internal jugulars on both sides. And then the right subclavian and left subclavian veins. So the right subclavian vein there, anatomically, and the left subclavian vein there. So the blending of the subclavians on both sides with the correct same-sided jugular, internal jugular, is what gives you the left brachiocephalic right there, vein, and the right brachiocephalic vein right there. The internal jugulars matching with the correct subclavian veins give you these two brachiocephalic veins. And that's kind of good to know right now, because that's what we're going to see in lymphatics. All the lymphatics will drain into these two subclavians. The lymph fluid, which is no red cells in it, of course, but this lymph fluid that we'll see in Unit 2 will drain into the subclavians. Okay. So next up, we're looking at the aortic arch. Like I said, ascending aortic arch, descending aorta, but the 3 branches coming off of the aortic arch are typically this one right here. The first one that we see is going to be called the brachiocephalic trunk. So these were brachiocephalic veins, the big purple ones here up there, making the SVC. But this first branch off the aortic arch on the left, anatomically it's the right, but in this picture it's on the left, is going to be called the brachiocephalic trunk. Just like we have pulmonary trunk, but this one's brachiocephalic trunk. Then the middle one here is going to be your left common carotid. This is going to go up the left side of the neck right here. It's about midway. And then it's going to split to the internal and external carotids, but just no common carotid right now off the aortic arch. Then this, the last branch that we see, is going to be your left subclavian. You can follow it all the way up to the arm. It'll become the axillary. Then it'll become the brachial. That's what we're going to see in our lab book. So one more time, your three major branches off the aortic arch, starting with this one, is the brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid, and left subclavian. So the weird part is that why don't we have, if we have left common carotid and left subclavian, why don't we have a right common carotid and right subclavian? Wouldn't that make sense? Well, what happens is that brachiocephalic trunk, as it arises here, then it splits to become the right common carotid here and the right subclavian there. For whatever reason, it just makes a trunk first, and then it splits off into the two. So ultimately, yes, you have two common carotids going up the neck, two subclavians going off to each arm. But on the right side, it takes the form of the trunk first, and then it divides into those two, going to the head and arm. Weird. In some, there is a small ratio of people that actually have 4 vessels off the aortic arch, in which case it would be the common carotid and the subclavian coming off just like it is on the left, but also on the right side, making it 4.
Why would they have 4? Some people have 4.
Because you see how we have 2 right here for the left common carotid and left subclavian, you would have a right common carotid and a right subclavian coming off, totaling 4.
I'm saying, why would some people have that 4? You said there's 3 there.
Instead of having a trunk, they don't have a trunk.
Oh,
Instead of having the trunk, they have the right common carotid and right subclavian straight off the aorta. Yeah, but don't worry about that. I'm not going to test you on that.
can you go on the superior?
The vena cava again? Yeah. Superior vena cava right here. It's formed by the conversion of the right brachiocephalic vein right there and the left brachiocephalic vein right there. And these 2 brachiocephalics are made from the jugular, internal jugular and subclavian vein coming together. So right subclavian, right internal jugular makes the right brachiocephalic vein. Left internal jugular, left subclavian vein joins to make the left brachiocephalic vein. That's why you got to give it up for God. You know, it's pretty mastery of of organization going on here for all this to just be made in the body all of a sudden, you know, in every person. Pretty darn cool. All right. So next, I gotta get rid of this. One sec. Do it. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Come on now. It should be letting me go. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, guys. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll look at some of the blood vessels. We'll use our lab books as our word bank and just I'm going to hand out this sheet to you, and we'll do what we can to try to just see these blood vessels, okay? So let's take a break. Okay, so we can come back to this one. And what I want to do tonight is just kind of like a little bit of a prequel to what we're going to do Thursday. We'll roll in the models from the other lab for the, we have 2 stick man, and we should have 3, but hopefully just at least get 2. That shows the arteries and veins. So we'll be looking at the arm and leg, that kind of thing, and some of the arteries that go to the organs. But I just have this sheet for you just as a little prep to get us ready for that. And then beyond that, I'll have, well, I got this one too, that has the arteries and veins in one picture rather than separated. So I didn't print that one for you, but there it is right there if you want to print it. What's that?
How are we gonna break?
I don't know. But this one's good too. I did the other one because it has the stuff in the middle, you know. It's a more of a full review. And then we've got a little bit of that liver circulation and abdominal flow. So just as an example, this gives you some of the major things coming off that abdominal aorta. We can see the, right here, we see this celiac, where'd my mouse go? My goodness. This celiac trunk, which is going to give us supply to the spleen over here. And we see some other ones, the mesenterics that go to the intestines. So we'll get into those as well. And that's some of the venous circulation as well through the liver. But here's the big idea, guys. When we get into the liver, we're going to see that the liver itself is served by the hepatic artery from the aorta, yeah. But when it comes from the venous side, all the venous drainage from all the abdominal organs here is going to come through the intestines up into the liver and then carried from the hepatic vein into the vena cava. So it's a little bit of a sideways, you can think of it as a sideways flow. So think of this as the GI. Instead of the GI giving its blood straight to the inferior vena cava, the intestines are going to drain the venous circulation into the liver. Then the liver carries it through the hepatic portal vein here into the liver, then hepatic vein into the vena cava. So a little bit of a different setup. So we go through the portal vein first, then to the liver, then the hepatic vein takes us to the inferior vena cava. So that's the confusing part about the liver. So we're not going to worry about the bowel right now. That's going to come later when we do the digestive chapter. But right now, just realize this is one of these portal circulations where we use the hepatic portal vein to drain the intestines. That goes into the liver. Then from the liver on to the hepatic vein. Right here, this is your hepatic vein. It carries it from the liver to the inferior vena cava. So the liver has its own drainage, yes, but it's also collecting the drainage from the GI, is what I'm trying to say. This one right here.
I have, the anatomy cards that they sell in the bookstore. I think.
Oh, yeah, you should have one of the cards like this, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, there's one more slide, I think, before I come back to that one. Oh, yeah, that's just another look. It's a more of an advanced look at the liver, so this is kind of hard to look at, but there's your hepatic veins, guys, draining from the liver, which is going to bring you to the inferior vena cava. It's just another way to look at it. Maybe not so helpful. And another inside view of the liver. So there's your portal vein taking in the intestinal drainage from the veins, from the intestines, carrying it through the liver. All these little, you see all these Kupffer cells here. These are macrophages that clean up all the crap that we bring in the liver. And then there's your hepatic vein, which is going to carry it back to the vena cava. So long story short, we come into the liver using the portal vein, draining the intestines via the portal vein. Then the liver does what it does, breaks things down, detoxifies, carries all that crappy blood into the hepatic vein. That's what goes to the vena cava. All right, so that's just a brief look at that. Going back to what's most important for today is this stuff here. So use your lab book best you can. Try to find these arteries that are listed in your lab manual here on these pictures. And we'll do the rest. So we'll just take about 15-20 minutes to do that today. And we'll do the rest on Thursday with the models, okay? So we'll make it a short night. Just do what you can, try to find what you can in your lab manual using these right here. Now, I will say this. Somebody, I don't know who did this one, they messed up bad. Look at this picture, what the hell they did, I don't know what they did, but this is wrong. Let me show you why it's wrong. I can have a ruler or not. Oh, there's all the markers.
I said that 3 weeks.
You
ago.
did, you know, I'm a man. Okay, so up here, this is all kinds of wrong. There's your brachiocephalic trunk, yes.
Right.
Okay, let me use my other point, I'm sorry. So here's what's wrong on this picture. I just now noticed it after I printed it. So very sorry. Okay, so here's what's correct. There's our brachiocephalic trunk, all good, which splits into the left common carotid, or excuse me, the right common carotid and the right subclavian arteries. That's fine. Now, this picture shows the left common carotid coming off here, which is also correct. But on this one, it shows that one right there. So you have to fix this on your sheet. That is your right subclavian artery, right there. Which is correctly labeled over here, subclavian artery, even though it doesn't say the left, excuse me, that's the left subclavian artery. But this business does not happen. Right? That's where it's wrong.
Where it says subclavian
It's,
artery. in
it's
the
trying to
blue.
show, oh, I see, it's trying to show vertebral arteries. Yeah, that's what's confusing about it. So it is partially correct. Just make sure you label this left subclavian right there. And that'll be your right subclavian over here. Just focus on that, because the other ones are the vertebral arteries. That's what they were doing. I missed that. It's my fault. Didn't mean to confuse you. Just go with it. It's cool. Just make sure you let that label that left subclavian over there on the left side.
And then the next one.
They just drew it too big is the problem. It's not that big of a branch. That's the problem. So your right subclavian over here, your left subclavian over there, your two common carotids going up right there. See how the common carotids, they come to a point where they split? That's how you know you got the common carotids. These other ones are the vertebral arteries,
Okay, what's the?
which I haven't really announced yet.
I noticed in, on the assignment, homework assignment, it's mentioned something about the external carotid arteries.
Right, that's where I'm
So
pointing to right
those
now.
are the outer.
Here's your external carotids. There's the internal carotid. So it splits about midway through the neck right here. That's where your common carotid stops. And then you got an internal and external that goes up.
Okay,
We'll also see the same thing for the iliac, if you want to breeze down there, where the aorta finally splits around the area of the navel. We're going to see the common iliac artery, and then it's going to split into the external and internal iliac arteries.
yeah.
Right. So we can see the renal arteries going to the kidneys.
I could have a problem with that inferior, mesenteric,
Mesenteric. Yeah, that supplies the upper and lower intestines, superior and inferior mesenteric.
And which list are you wanting?
In your lab book, the list of arteries and veins. Yeah. Just find what you can.
I think that's where I messed up on the homework assignment. It was confusing to me.
So the easier part of this assignment would just be to check out the subclavian turning into the axillary. It's going to come to the brachial artery as it passes through the arm, and then split into radial and ulnar arteries in the arm. So at least everyone right now could do the arm. It'd be really, really easy, safe learning that first. Then go for the leg, do the same with the leg. And try to do the same thing for the vein. Veins are a little bit different, you know, than the arteries are. Intercostals are not seen here. Those are between the ribs. Yeah, they're just not shown here.
On the board, you want to make sure that you can identify.
Right there. Internal, external. Internal, external. Yeah, so all the ones you would be responsible for on your practical would be listed in your lab manual. Which is a lot.
So all of it, all of it.
No, look at the list. Look at the list.
36, 37, 38, 31.
There you go.
Yeah.
It is a lot. Well, the heart should be easy, hopefully, for you guys. That not much of a problem there. So the next big step is the blood vessels. That's why I was trying to break it up into 2 classes. So even if you can just focus on the arms and legs for tonight, I'm good with that. Right? Let's get those down. Because the models, maybe they'll show the other ones better than these pictures, the organs. These aren't real good for the organs. So just focus on arms and legs for about 10 minutes, and then we'll do the last few. I got some sample questions I'd like to go through on the PowerPoint. And again, y'all, this PowerPoint with these pictures and even some of the questions I added in here, these are already uploaded to the e-learn for you to download.
And it breaks off into so.
Like that's the trunk, it's kind of like a hole in the trunk. And then break them off and have arteries and veins coming. And it breaks the rest of the body. Yeah, it's the trunk, and then it breaks off like the different arteries.
So there is one that's not labeled on here that's in your book. It's going to be the popliteal. So guys, if you want to look at your arterial side first on this pic. You see the femoral artery labeled here, mid-thigh, roughly. As it approaches the knee, of course, it goes behind the knee to become the popliteal. So if you want to just write that in there, right at the level of the knee, just come off the side here and label that popliteal artery.
Popularity.
Popliteal, Popliteal. If you'll notice the in the leg, we have a femoral vein coming up, of course. The tibial veins, of course, complement the arteries, but this saphenous vein is new. So the internal vein on the inside of your leg, the great saphenous. And then the big one coming up the outside of the arm is actually called the cephalic vein. What an odd name for a vein. I would have not chosen that name, but that's the big vein on the lateral side of the arm coming up. It's the cephalic vein. And you still got the axillary vein becoming the subclavian vein. That's cool. But that cephalic is the sneaky one here, rounding off that shoulder, basically. And then the other sneaky part is right here. You got a basilic vein and median cubital that join to make your axillary. So those are the kind of things that you might see written as a test question, as opposed to just being labeled, is what artery becomes what, you know, or that kind of thing. That's tough. I know that's picky, but just look out for those.
And then it turns into,
Yeah, if you follow the cephalic
right.
coming all the way up, right?
Mhm.
It merges with your
Subclavian.
subclavian. And subclavian merges with the internal jugular to become brachiocephalic. So that is craziness to learn that. And the brachiocephalics make the inferior vena cava. So that would represent the hardest kind of thing you would get. For the most part, the practicals, we're going to label, you know, things that you'll easily be able to see, but the lecture descriptions might be a little tough, you know. But again, these tough questions that I talk about only represent 10 to 15% of your tests. The bulk of questions will be things that should be able to be answered. You know, more easier things than that.
Is the fibular and the perineal the same?
Yeah. Yeah, perineal or peroneal is the same as fibular. So like I say, always in AP1, find your strategy, pick what is easy for you, do that first and do it well. Then categorize where you might need to spend some time later on for something more difficult. Don't beat yourself up just because you don't get all the difficult things at first. Make sure you master all the things that do make sense to you first, ride that wave, and then come back. That's the only strategy that's going to work, you know. Otherwise, you're going to get all kinds of depressed and everything. Yeah, so we got a chat question asking how this might be worded on the exam. And one thing would be the common iliac branches into what other two vessels? The internal and external iliacs, right? The femoral artery, as it passes through the back of the knee, will become the popliteal artery. The subclavian artery passing across the shoulder and armpit will become the axillary artery. As the axillary artery descends through the arm, it becomes the brachial artery. Then splits to become the radial and ulnar down the forearm. So basically just completing a passage or fill in the blank, multiple choice, of course, but that's the kind of stuff to expect. The two brachiocephalic veins merge to become what? Superior vena cava. The pulmonary trunk divides itself into what? The two pulmonary arteries, right? So the best way to study for those kind of questions is as you're labeling your pictures, speak it out. Get used to hearing yourself say what blends and what divides, that kind of thing.
And then the last part of it, when we're having to label.
Yeah, you just label it. And just make sure you end it with an A or a V for artery or vein.
Have us to label the, subclavian vein.
Yeah,
No,
qualify left or right,
left or right.
and then A or V for artery or vein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just told me.
But you need to make sure, but left or right, left or right.
Okay, so it's just about 8 o'clock. I wanted to maybe take 5 minutes and go through these questions just to give you some examples. And then we'll call it night. Okay. During sympathetic stimulation, blood is diverted to the skeletal muscles from the GI tract. Which blood vessels do this? So where the key is skeletal muscles. So skeletal muscles represent the muscular arteries, which are the medium-sized arteries. Remember at the tissue level, right, is going to be the small ones, the capillary level. The big ones are the elastic ones, the aorta and such. Which blood vessel will be categorized as an elastic artery, the big one? Two of the above, common iliac and aorta, because they're big ones. Everybody good there? Systemic circulation carries oxygen-rich blood to tissues and capillary beds. What's your key word? Capillary beds. So what is it? Arterioles. These are the resistance arteries, right? The ones that go to the capillary beds. Albumin, produced by the liver. Large plasma protein enters the bloodstream. The key word is it's large. So it can't just slip through a little tiny little cleft. It's got to have a large space. And where is it going? Another key word, liver. So if all you did was read this question, you underline large protein and liver. What's the leakiest one we got? Sinusoids, because it's in the liver. Superficial vein that drains the lateral aspect of the arm. That weird one, yep, cephalic. Artery that supplies the upper GI, superior mesenteric. Most of blood in the left subclavian artery will flow into the left. What? It shouldn't say most, it should say all. So the subclavians on both sides become the brachiocephalics. Yeah.
I really did. You said.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I read the question wrong. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I read it wrong. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. That was, yeah, I know why that one's wrong. I copied it from somewhere else and didn't change it. Shoot. So this was supposed to be the subclavian artery. What was it flow into next? Axillary. Yes, if that was an artery, I'm so sorry. That would be axillary artery. But the correct answer for this question should be the brachiocephalic. My bad. My goodness. Look at me confusing y'all. I am so sorry. Yep. The left subclavian will drain to become in the brachiocephalic vein. So see, it says artery. Now that question's all kinds of messed up. I'm so sorry. You did it too fast. I'll fix it and re-upload it. Major branch off the aorta to supply the head would be the biggest branch off the aortic arch to supply the head. Common carotid. Major branch off the descending aorta to supply the legs. Common iliac. Vein that drains the blood from the digestive organs into the liver. Hepatic portal. All right, so I'll fix those other two that were messed up. So sorry. We'll do them again on Thursday and make sure we got them right. All right, guys, have a great evening.